Hello and welcome to Variation 33. Variation 33 is about flying staccato again, but this time it's all in the upper half. In the upper half of the bow is naturally softer because it's lighter. It's also naturally more difficult to control because our bow hand is further away from where the hairs connect with the string. The good news is that just practicing something which is difficult to control, just the practicing of it improves all of your bow technique because you're practicing bow control. So that's one of the reasons why this variation is very helpful, not just for improving your flying staccato, but for all of your bow technique. You might remember from previous flying staccato videos that the basis for practicing flying staccato is repeated up bows staying in one place of the bow, using a circular motion of your hand and fingers. This is used in Variation 15. Variation 15 is about exactly this technique, and it is the basis of flying staccato because it's the same impulse we give as when we're traveling. When we allow the bow to travel, we're doing the same thing, just less of it. So practicing it exaggerated by staying in one place is hugely helpful for flying staccato because it also gives you the feeling of being able to continue endlessly and not running out of bow. Practice these repeated up bows staying in one place on one note at first, and start off by practicing them in the middle of the bow. Make sure to land the bow softly and gently. We don't want... That doesn't sound good. To land the bow softly and gently, it helps to tilt the bow slightly towards the fingerboard. That reduces the tension on the hairs and helps landing the bow softly. And also make sure you do not lift the bow too high. The further the bow goes away from the string, the more difficult it is to land it softly and gently. It's quite a small movement. The circular movement is hardly visible. The next step is to do the same thing, but do these repeated up bows slightly above the middle, about 1 centimeter closer to the tip than you did them before. You will already notice that that's more difficult to control. That's what we're practicing here. So just practicing that will improve all of your bow control. And then move them slightly closer to the tip again. And even closer to the tip. You will notice that as from a certain point they won't work anymore. This is already not working. I can't control it properly and it doesn't sound good. So you will notice that as from a certain point you can't do it anymore. And that will be your personal cutoff point because you need to know exactly where you can start these repeated notes, because that will be where you can start the flying staccato. It doesn't help to start it too close to the tip if you can't control it. The next step is to practice it with the correct amount of notes so that you're getting closer to what you actually have to do in the variation. That would be 5 repeated up bows, still staying in one place at your personal cutoff point above the middle where you still have control. The next step is to allow your bow to travel a little bit towards the middle, but not further than the middle because we're supposed to do this in the upper half. Notice how much easier it feels allowing your bow to travel towards the middle than to stay in one place. Because if you've practiced staying in one place, the actual flying staccato where your bow is traveling is actually much easier. Remember also, as always, to give yourself plenty of time just practicing the left hand. The best way to do this is to do it with staccato on the string, because you can do that slowly, but make sure you stay in the upper half so that you get used to playing this variation just in the upper half. That's a very helpful way of practicing it, because you are doing a very similar bowing and you are staying in the upper half, so your bow division is the same, but you can practice it slowly so that you can really secure the left hand. Remember, flying staccato is a semi-passive bowing. That means that the left hand has to follow the bow. The bow indicates when the next note comes. The bow can't wait for the left hand to be in place. So for the left hand to be able to follow the bow, it has to be very secure, it has to feel very easy. So give yourself plenty of time to secure that, and then you can speed it up, still just doing the staccato on the string. There you are already bringing right and left hand together a little bit, just it's not yet flying staccato, the bow is just not yet leaving the string. When you start practicing this variation in flying staccato, because it's all in the upper half, we actually do a combination of staying in one place and allowing the bow to travel a little bit. Basically what I do is I allow the bow to travel until I hit the middle, and then I sort of have to stay in one place. So we are working with two different bow speeds here. For the slurred notes, we're traveling faster, and for the staccato notes, the bow speed is slower because we are half staying in one place and half allowing the bow to travel. That's why it's so important to practice both methods first, staying in one place and allowing the bow to travel. And bottom line is that you end up with doing a combination of both. You can see I'm moving the bow a bit faster for the slur, and then I cover less ground for the staccato notes. One of the best practicing methods for flying staccato, actually also for staccato on the string, but particularly for flying staccato, is to practice doubling the staccato notes. Because that is literally making it twice as difficult for yourself. You have twice as many notes to play, and they are twice as fast if you double them this way. The good thing about that is, if you can do that, even if you can't practice that to complete perfection, just by practicing that, that will result in what you actually have to do, feeling so much more free and easy. Suddenly one feels as if one has so much more bow, although one's still just staying in the upper half, and one feels one has so much more time. So that's a practicing method that I can really recommend for this variation. In bars 2, 4 and 6, make sure you do not lift your bow for the 16th note rest, just stop the bow. It's very important, because if you lift your bow in the 16th note rest, you have to bring it back down again, and because you're in the upper half, it will bounce. So for the 16th note rest, just stop the bow. In the bars 10, 12 and 14, you have the 32nd notes. And to get them precise, it helps to practice them catching the string before and after. That helps a lot because you will get them very precise. When you play them later on, you don't have to completely catch the string. If you've practiced them catching the string, you will be stopping the bow and they will be precise. That was half catching the string, and that's enough. So practice it completely catching the string, giving yourself proper time to catch the string, and then when you play it and you have less time, it's okay if you only half catch the string, because they will still come off a lot more precise than if you hadn't practiced it catching the string. In bar 16, where we have this, use your wrist for the string crossings. Don't use your whole arm. You'll be moving too much mass at a high speed. We don't want... That's too much of a movement. It's enough just to use your wrist. That will sound a lot better. In the end, you're supposed to use the whole bow. You have to remember that, and also you have to remember that there's one note more. So, you have to remember you've got to use all your bow so that you bring your hand close to the string for the pizzicato. And you have to remember that you have one note more. Strangely enough, very often when I was practicing this, in spite of finally being able to use the whole bow, I wound up with not having enough bow for the last note because I kept on forgetting there's an extra note at the end. We have one note more to fit in. So remember that when you're practicing it. I hope you enjoyed this variation. As always, let me know if you have any questions, and happy practicing.